but I did get to hang out with Rappaport, who's hilarious. We had so much fun. I didn't realize that.
He's sued Kevin.
Oh, no. So you, Gary. Wow.
Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast.
How we doing, dude?
I feel great.
Yeah?
I feel great. Yeah. How about you guys?
Fine.
Okay.
I'd like to give you more energy than that. Actually,
pretty average.
It was you?
Pretty average.
Pretty average.
Well, what time did you have to get up today to go to work?
I got up at 9.
Put it this way: this is we're now on
But
our
the
like
Pats played
fifth
late
hour
last
of
night.
recording.
Pats played late last night, so that was
right.
And then I stayed up late Saturday. It's a whole thing.
A nice
the
run of home losses.
Yeah.
You guys stink. By the way,
I honestly still don't think they
thumping
stink.
his chest like we're a top 5 team in football.
He said last night after the game, he said we might not be top 5.
Okay, finally conceded. The most ridiculous point I've ever heard.
Yeah, probably not top 5 in the AFC East.
I still think there's something
This is where you guys are truly first. This is your first foray into like being a bad football team.
But here's the thing: I'm watching, and I've already touched on this a bit with you last night. Where like I think it's because we've been so lucky with so many championships, where like everything's at a lesser. But I'm not speaking for the fan base.
Unless you listen to sports radio in Boston.
Yeah. But for me, I'm like, I wish they were better. But they're not.
I'm the same way. But it's clear. One thing has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. I feel it's sort of I call it the Larry David principle, in that you compare what Seinfeld has done without Larry David.
Yes.
And you compare
Bill
what
Belichick and
Tom Brady did without Bill Belichick. It's clearly
I mean,
genius.
winning
B movie notwithstanding.
So you think Larry David was the true genius behind that all?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the
is that a pro Larry take or an anti Seinfeld?
A pro Larry, but also. Have you ever heard a story of Jerry Seinfeld being kind to someone?
Well, there was. I actually always stick up for Seinfeld because of one particular story where he was railroaded by Gawker back in the day, where it was like, look at this asshole. And it wasn't a video or anything like that. It was a story where he was in the Hamptons. Someone had hit his antique car, and he was a little upset about it.
But no. You start this sentence with my antique car.
But it was like, I don't know. Someone hit his car
and in the Hamptons, as they say in Reservoir Dogs.
It was like he was just like trying to get insurance from somebody.
Yeah,
and they were like,
I get it. Like you're allowed to.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was really polite about it. Do you even have insurance? Well, why would you even insure a car that isn't a 1911 Porsche Carrera?
He is the definition of like
pompous ass.
It's just also just not necessary. Like you're so successful, you're so much money, so much fame, everything. Like, you've got it all. Just like.
But it's almost it's perfect for him. Like
I'm still angry that in 1993, just out of college, bought his book Sign Language, and it was just his act. He had typed up and bound his act. And so when I wrote my book, which I came on to promote, I said, I'm not just typing up my act. Because it was 1995, which in 1993, to a college kid, that was a lot of money, and the only solace I could take was I remember looking at the cover and thinking, thank God I don't live in Canada.
Why is that?
I think it's
1995 slash 25.
Yeah, it's the exchange rate, but also they get health insurance, whereas we don't. So in the long run, you pay a little bit more for books, but you get your cardiac arrest covered.
You know what's interesting that you say that? Because I'm gonna come clean about something. I only got it Friday, and I've only read like 200 pages. I was a little
200 pages is a lot of pages.
So many pages.
Okay. But also he's rounding up from 160.
Yes, I am. I just started 5th grade.
Why even lie?
It's just a nice round number, dude.
160
because at 161 would have been fine. At least I knew you were telling the truth.
Yeah.
You should have rounded up on chapters. I'm up to the 10th chapter.
Bro, as I was saying, I was like, I know he's going to call me on.
No, that you even opened it, I'm impressed.
It's amazing.
That means so much to me.
I love it. I'm such a big fan. But it's interesting that you said that you said that Jerry's was all his act. It's interesting reading it where there's some parts where I'm like, oh, he's going to go into a Great Depression thing right here, and then you don't.
Yeah,
and that's probably
right. Yeah, because I didn't want people to seek revenge on me 30 years later on a podcast. Gulman sold me his act twice. Yeah.
But a few interesting things I remember from reading it. And again, as I haven't finished it, so forgive me if you go on to explain it, although I think I did hit where you do. You use God a lot, but you don't spell God. I think you said you did that was in I can't think, I'm saying CCD, but it's not
in
CCD.
Hebrew school.
Hebrew school, yes.
Jewish CCD.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to write out the word God.
Yeah.
Because it was using the Lord's name in vain. Yeah. So I used a dash, and I'm still supersticious about that.
You still won't do it?
To this day,
which is right? Just in case.
Yeah, just in case this is one of his little things.
Everybody's got something that sticks with them. It might be a book from 1993. Who knows? Maybe Yahweh's up there like that motherfucker.
Exactly.
My name in vain.
Exactly. What does he
All
think?
over that book.
I'm some fuck up here.
Those rules are so fun. So, are you religious in that regard? Are you believe in some
I believe in God, and then I've cobbled together a religion based on.
You are one man. If you told me this is the gospel of Gulman, I'm serious. I think out of everyone I've met in this industry, I think has the best moral compass and, and probably outlook on life. I think I would listen to you over like maybe anybody.
That's really nice to say. I mean, I've put together this kind of philosophy or how I get by with like 6 of the 10 commandments, Christ's Sermon on the Mount, basically the closing piece, which was do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
That's the big one.
And then quotes from the Goodreads homepage. There's so many really great ideas and thoughts on there. I'm like, all right, this is one to live by. So,
we got this too shall pass. As well, right?
This too shall pass is from the Old Testament. King Solomon wanted a way. He said, "Make me a ring that will make a happy man weep and a sad man happy." Or something like that. I'm probably paraphrasing it badly. And so the man wrote on the ring, "This too shall pass." So you don't get too high, you don't get too... It's very Jewish thinking. Laugh now, cry later. It's that whole thing. But I've found thinking about that helps me through a lot of different things and can temper some of the unwieldy joy that occasionally comes my way. But I'm like, all right, just don't get too cocky, kid. It's also the Star Wars.
Listen, it's probably the best. I think it's the best piece of advice you can have. Is maybe more so for like work and stuff. You know?
Oh yeah,
like
totally.
Maybe not in love and family and stuff doesn't apply, but when it comes to work and success and money, certainly fame and all that stuff, don't get too cocky.
Totally. And I really think everybody should at least kind of either journal or take down their accomplishments and things that they overcame, because one thing that I learned from doing this book is that every single thing that I became any good at initially was overwhelming, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to literally tie my shoes. How am I ever going to figure out 6 times 9? How am I going to ever get over my first girlfriend leaving me? And I just wish there was somebody who would say, you will figure all this out, even the girlfriend thing. Sometimes my wife will walk past me naked. I won't even look twice. It's just, but in 10th grade, I was like, oh, I'm never going to kiss a girl. And now
I get naked girls in the room.
I'm indifferent to a nude woman if the Celtics are playing.
If anything, it's like, put some clothes on. What are you doing? There's society here.
Right? Isn't it? We figure it out. And so I just try to remind myself of that. Even in writing the book, initially I thought I have to do a really hard thing that I've never done before, and I kept going back and forth with the editor, and it would be try again. And I thought, oh, I'm never going to finish by the deadline. And eventually you figure it out, or you give the advance back.
Yeah. Did you get a nice chunk of change?
I did okay. Yeah. Not enough where my family would be impressed, but enough where I was like, all right, this makes rent a little bit easier.
I believe last time you were on the show, you said something about, the money you have is like all you need. You were just this is it. No, I don't need a dime more than this.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have.
No, it's nice to have because we know that you really have to save for retirement or else you're in trouble in this country. But I feel like I will leave my wife with a nice nest egg were I to die in an untimely death, and I'll get by in my 80s if I
we'll figure that out.
Exactly. I will figure it out.
I hate how much we either through family planning or money and work or whatever it is, I feel like we kind of punt on our 30s and 40s and even 50s for our 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it's like, I'm not going to be able to walk at that age. Fuck it. Have fun now,
That's such a great point that we hoard all this money and time. We won't spend any time on things that really bring us great joy. And it's great if your work brings you joy, but also it's still work. There's still anxiety and there's still pressure. And it's just, I admire people who have 2 or 3 shows they're running at the same time, that they've got this series and they're working on a movie. And I think, no, thank you. I like to be a guest star on things and just show up and go home.
I remember I was in Europe recently, and they were talking about. I was at dinner, and someone next to me was talking about Americans, and we all know, what's the phrase? Americans work to live, Europeans live to work, or whatever it is. Reversed.
I think it's reversed.
And they were talking about their friend, and it was this guy was like, I have this friend, and she's a marketing director at Pepsi or whatever, and he's like, do you know what she works? 50 hours a week. And he was like,
wow.
He's like, guess how many weeks a year? She works 50 weeks a year. She gets 14 days off. And he was like, I work 30 weeks a year. And I was like, God, but also to an extent, I can't. I've tried to give myself time.
That's the real shame, is that we've been indoctrinated. Because it's I can't even if I have a day to myself now to do nothing, 2 hours into it, I start feeling guilty. I start to do shit. It's like,
I wish I didn't.
I have to me too. I have to force myself. Whereas when I was younger, I used to have a
indoctrinated is the right word, because we are a cult of capitalism.
Yeah.
I have a brother who is clearly ADHD. We went to a Celtics game one time in Larry Bird's prime, and I think Bird had 36 points and 14 rebounds.
You think?
And my brother didn't pay attention to any of the game. He was poking me, he was irritating me, he was going up for snacks. And back then we were just like, oh, he's hyper, he doesn't know how to behave at basketball games. By the way, he was 11 years older than me. You're picturing him being the same age as me. I was 10, sitting quietly. He was 21 years old. And so now he works with his hands, and he's great at it, but he works ridiculous hours because he can't sit still unless he's working. There's some guilt or something, and part of it is you grow up poor and you're always worried you're going to be poor again. So there's that, but it's also the poor guy. He can't even take a night off to come see one of my shows.
Yeah,
really?
That's crazy.
Yeah, such a bummer.
I feel like I would kill to be one of those people who are just kind of just have a little bit more of a simple view of life and are just I'm good.
Yeah.
I told this a few weeks ago. I went to the Cracker Barrel for the first time.
Oh.
And on the menu, it has a to-go option. You can take some meals to go. And I painted this ridiculous picture of me and other people. You go to the Cracker Barrel, you have your breakfast, and you get a meal to go, and you take it back to your modest but cozy house.
Yeah.
And you eat your Cracker Barrel on your front porch in the summer sun, and you're just thrilled, and you're just that's all I want to do. It makes me happy, and I don't know if those people exist because I'm sure there are some people who are like, I want to eat fucking Cracker Barrel to go. But in my mind, it was like so cheap and it was like soul food, comfort food. I was like, all I want to do is eat Cracker Barrel to go because in my mind, I've like romanticized it as something that's like relaxing and you're not pushing yourself too much and all that. But
yeah, Cracker Barrel is a big staple for comedians on the road.
Really?
No matter how remote your show is, you usually have to do radio. If you're performing in a town with a Cracker Barrel, they're going to make you do radio in the morning at 6:30 in the morning, and then you're starving, so the whoever is producing it takes you to Cracker Barrel, so you're saving some money. And then Cracker Barrel, yes, it's a restaurant, but it's also in the middle of a candy store and garage sale.
Tchotchkes,
and then on the outside they make all their money on the rocking chairs. That's where the money is, because the rocking chairs, everything else is like a nickel, and then the rocking chairs are hundreds of dollars, and they're strong. They're good rocking chairs, but that place is a furniture store with a breakfast.
It's the first IKEA.
Yeah, instead of
IKEA's
meatballs,
built on the Cracker Barrel
they serve country fried chicken.
I'm just thinking about some Cracker
fried
Barrel
steak.
executive being like, here's the deal. We'll give them the eggs for free. But the rocking chair is going to be $600.
It's like, what is it about the movies? It's actually a pop.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Totally. And a lot of the stand-up comedy clubs, they're making all their money on the chicken fingers.
Yeah.
And the drinks, because they're paying the middle acts $1.
Dude, let me tell you. Two things that I've learned having interviewed a ton of your peers. Number one, stop doing that radio. Stop it.
Yeah.
You wake up at 6 in the morning when you're used to probably waking up 4 hours later to talk to 3 people.
No, I know.
Radio, maybe that was a thing back in the day, way back in the day.
Yeah.
It is. Just say no.
Thank you.
And the other thing is that the pay is crazy, man.
Oh, I know.
I remember
It's so
Rich Voss
insulting.
and Bonnie told us that they hosted a show. This was like sometime last year, and they got $120 between the two of them. Two like lifelong legends of comedy, and they had the nerve to hand them 5 or 6 20s.
My word. It's so gross.
What? And I know that we're in the middle of a comedy boom, and everyone's watching specials, and you can't get tickets and all this shit, and you're gonna give me $60.
Yeah.
I'm gonna light this place on fire.
Yeah. There's a boom at the top, but for everybody starting out, it is, man, they haven't received a pay raise. They've more than likely gotten a pay cut to open for these people. I'm generous with the people who open for me because I used to tour with a guy who didn't pay me. Didn't pay me.
Can't say his name.
Didn't pay me very well. You do a little bit of Googling and you'll figure it out. But I just I can't do that, and I mean I'm basically a socialist in that I love to share the wealth.
Yeah,
man.
There's
I
enough
have plenty
to go around when you make it.
Totally.
I think it was Rosebud maybe who told us that fact that it's like, I think features are getting paid the same amount they were in like 1985.
Yeah.
How the fuck does an industry stop for 40 years?
Just
stopped.
That's because
crazy.
they have they literally don't have an agent. They don't have except themselves, and they're hoping that they'll do well enough that they get brought back. But even if they do well,
who cares if you get brought back? It's over $100.
Yeah, you should be being paid a reasonable rate.
Yeah.
And it's not. Yeah, it's. I'll match whatever if there are people. I have people who open for me, but I always match whatever the place pays, which is at least $500, and then pay for their flight and hotel and everything like that. So you usually walk away with $1,500 from a set from me, which is 5 times what I used to get when I was opening. It's just
but that's like
awful.
How it should be. You know what I mean?
You're an interesting person to have on, I think, because I think you are obviously incredibly talented, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm doing. But you are so clearly someone who's suffered from real mental health issues and things like that and overcome them. And I mean that in a very obvious way.
That's the proper way to say it. You don't have to walk on eggshells around me.
But, like, do you look around nowadays and do you think it's gotten too much? Like, do you think there's stolen valor amongst us?
Oh, that's an interesting question. One thing I always think is, man, I'm glad I got my special in when I did, because it's not that unusual now to talk about mental health. But when I first started, there were people talking about mental health, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they're gonna let this room full of strangers know all this about them, and I thought, wow, that is ballsy, and also really, it made me uncomfortable. I remember thinking, if I didn't know anything about mental health, I would have been uncomfortable. It actually made me very happy. I was like, oh, I'm not alone in this. But the one thing...
Is there one that jumps out at you?
There was one woman named Barbara Swanson who talked about being on Prozac in 1993, and I was like, oh my gosh, I take that, and I don't want anybody to know. And she's telling all these strangers. She has so much courage. And so I think it's helpful for everybody to talk about it. I don't know that they're going to get a special out of it. So I feel like, that's a bummer that most of the specials about mental health have been done. But there'll be one.
It's mine. It's all mine.
But I felt that way. I felt like I was covering territory that had been covered because Chris Gethard had talked about it really deeply, and Maria Bamford and other people. And I thought, I'm just walking over territory that's been trampled on, and they did it so well. But
I mean, I saw Gethers and it was great.
Yeah,
I thought the Great Depression was a different level.
Yeah, but also when you can name like the 2 or 3 that did it has not been trampled on. It's been lightly walked on.
Right.
You know, like it's still right now, even though it feels like it's overkill, it's probably still a new.
Yeah.
You know,
I think if you make it your entire thing, that's fine too. I just don't know that. I mean, again, I don't know that you'll get a special out of it, but you should share these things because I think overall it's better that people are comfortable talking about it and discussing it than the way I grew up with, which is shh, don't. My family is still very private about these things, and I've sort of.
But also I think there's a difference between like talking about it like in everyday life versus like making it part of your act. Because I do think it would be a little weird if like your everyday life just in social settings you were just talking.
I'm not even referring to just strictly to comedy, where I think like, and I have a very complicated relationship with it because I've done it before, and I think there was one I can point to the time where it kind of got where Dak Prescott was wearing it on his wrist, where he had like "You are not alone," and I was like, you know what, Dak, that makes me feel more alone too. Really? I think it is important to talk about, and I do believe all that. And then there are other times where it's almost like we were talking about Max Kellerman today, where I was like, I don't believe you saying it. Where like Max Kellerman talking about like Brady falling off a cliff, or like I'm like, you're doing an act, and like I guess if you genuinely believe it, then yes, by all means, please. But I think there are. I think there's a good amount of people who are.
I think there's probably a handful of people who are kind of phony about it.
Which is you can say about any industry. People see money in it.
I think almost the real problem is there are the people who are phony and they know they're phony, and they're just those people are assholes, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just like you're just like scamming. But then there are the people who are phony and they don't know it, and they think they're like deep, and it's just like oh my god, you're just a walking cliche, you know.
But it's interesting. But with Dak Prescott, I think it's helpful in this way because I remember, and hardly any athletes were talking about this when I was coming up. So I think in the 1990s, Terry Bradshaw talked about having been depressed, like so depressed he couldn't get out of bed. He was sick with depression, and he said that people would say to him, "But you're Terry Bradshaw."
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, can't you just pull out one of your Super Bowl rings, put it on, and feel better? And then you realize, oh, it has nothing to do with accomplishment. It's a chemistry. And that was illuminating, and it made me, I didn't feel any better, but I realized that I wasn't going to be able to achieve my way out of thinking I was a piece of crap.
You could
I needed
specials.
Yes.
I remember
and that was really helpful because to me, Terry Bradshaw was sort of the epitome of machismo and strength and masculinity, and also you could sometimes people say, well, Jerry West was very depressed because he only won one championship, but that's silly.
Yeah.
That's silly that his worth is dependent on him losing to the Celtics. But then you quadruple it with Terry Bradshaw and you see, oh, he's depressed with 4 Super Bowls. And okay, now the picture is becoming clearer that this thing isn't about working hard and getting somewhere. It's about fixing these things, sometimes with talk, sometimes with chemistry, and sometimes with thousands of electric volts.
Yeah,
in your
it is an
temple.
important note. Like it's the bubble I've created for myself where I see it so often. But then there are times where like Jake DeBrusque, you know, on the Bruins, like 2 years ago when Bruce Cassidy was still the coach, like he had a hard time and he was not a great player. And you know, and whereas I'm thinking, oh, it's a little old hat, you know, but there's still callers calling him like, cut his ass. And now, right now he's a 30-goal
walk
scorer.
it off.
Yeah.
Do you when you because you have gone through the electrical treatment, right? Like,
electroconvulsive therapy, it's called.
Which is like, you know, it's like the
ECT.
shock treatment, right? It's almost,
Yeah.
in movies, it looks crazy, but like they actually do that for real, right?
Yeah.
So like, do you get in the same vein as his question? Are you like, oh, like you know, you talk to your therapist about your bad day? I have electrotherapy in my brain. Like, you know, take a walk in my shoes, man.
No.
Yeah, that's why you're the best.
Well, I remember really like in the book, I really like how like interwoven throughout are your trips back home to when you're 47.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you describing a Post-it note in your room, and I forget what it said. I actually did write it down, but what did the Post-it note say?
I mean, one of them said,
nothing lasts forever.
Nothing lasts forever. Not even. What is it? Yeah, nothing lasts forever. Not even unbearable darkness or something like that. Or,
even cold November rain.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of when I went to visit my friend in college. I was still in high school, and I went into his dorm. And the only thing he had in his dorm was a Post-it note by his bed that said, "Don't kill yourself."
Wow. Yeah.
And I remember being like in high school, being like, "What the fuck is that all about?"
It was a quote from Michael Chabon, who wrote "The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay," which, if you haven't read, as soon as you put down Misfit, grab that book. It's really good.
But the excuse me, but the there's like while I was thinking and reading it, where I was like, you know, a 47-year-old who had to move back home and is hanging this note in his room must see someone being like, "I had a tough day today," and be like, "All right. Come on, like it is," and I know you're so great.
Yeah, but but the whole thing is it's all on a spectrum, and your brain is telling you similar things to what my brain was telling me, which is that I was worthless and a really good ideas to end it all today.
Well, I used to say that about like when I would see college kids on like Twitter being like, "I've got my finals tomorrow and I'm gonna like jump off a bridge. It's so crazy," and I'm like, "I got 2 kids. These bills, But like then you realize that like that person's brain who has not experienced 2 kids and bills and divorce and all that yet. To them, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. So you guys are feeling the same shit.
I mean, that's something that keeps coming up in the book is these things. Like one of the chapters. Part of the chapter is about me not being able to find a library book and getting all kinds of trouble with my mother and the teacher and the school librarian, and somebody said you made it seem as if this was a suspenseful, horrific trauma. And the truth is that when you're a kid, the stakes for everything are enormous. Whether you make a basketball team or whether you return a library book, whether you're able to make a new friend or a friend calls you back or a girlfriend calls you back. These things were just enormous. And so we get older and we're able to put things in perspective. But when you're a kid without a therapist or without, I don't know if my parents weren't people I could go to for much more than 24 hours with a problem. After 48 hours, it's like you're gonna have to figure out.
Just get over it.
Yeah, just get over it. You're still hung up about this girl who broke up with you 10 days ago. 10 entire days. And little do you know that every once in a while you'll have a dream about people you haven't seen for 35 years, and it'll fuck you up. Somebody who's passed away. Like I lost a very close neighbor when I was growing up, this woman named Margie, and I had a dream about her last night. Weird. She passed away in 1993, and I had a dream about her, and I was saying goodbye to her in the dream, and I remember thinking, why do I see her so infrequently? And when I do, I don't make a bigger deal out of saying goodbye, because just before I went to sleep tonight, she had been dead for over 30 years. It's just the
brain is crazy.
The brain and the dream thing, what is it trying to tell me? I think one of the things is you wonder how people who are no longer with us would react to something big like a book. but we know because there was things similar when we were alive. Like my father got so excited if I took a pitch that was a little bit outside. He would, what an eye on you, son. Son, what an eye. I said I could have knocked it out of the park. No, son. No, patience. Patience. Like I always think about that.
You know what's so funny you say that? Because my son is going right through that, and I thought the first like nuance of the game that he learned was to take a pitch. Because it's see ball, hit ball, catch ball, throw ball. Yeah. But then the first time he went to swing and then held it up, I was like, it was high outside. It was high outside.
Oh, Kev, that's awesome. That's a good dad. Yeah, that's a good dad. Because some dads would be like, be aggressive. If it's close, you swing away.
It is the. I always think I'm always going to relate to hockey, but it is when you're at a hockey game, a very common thing is shoot during the power play, and you really know when someone's talking about what someone's talking about, or they know what they're talking about when they were like they'll say something like, "Oh, that was good patience there." Patience is the most important thing in sports, in life, as you're talking about. Where, like it'll pass or it'll work out. Like it is.
It's also a motherfucker to have it. Because you want to shoot it and you want it to pass.
It is. Is there a sport that is a bigger disparity between TV and live than hockey?
No.
My word.
I would say tennis. I went to the US Open.
I've never been to a US Open. Really?
Amazing.
As big a gap between hockey and TV and
I think I would venture to
close,
guess.
Huh?
Yeah.
I've watched maybe 10 matches in my life.
Yeah.
And I was there and I was like, this is the greatest sport I've ever seen.
That's a revelation, man.
You know what you really don't know?
It was Carlos Alcaraz, who was like the number one player in the world, but still it was like
tennis courts are huge.
I didn't
like when you
right.
I've only been on a couple like my whole life.
Yeah.
So I think of it as like a basketball court, and then I'm trying to measure it.
Right.
And you see how big it is, like holy shit.
Yeah. And how much ground they cover.
And then when you see how fast it's going.
Yes.
I just watched a clip the other day. Andy Roddick, many years ago, served it into the clay.
Yeah,
it's crazy,
dude. You know that they still serve like $1.30. Like a great player, but Roddick was $1.50.
I mean,
like think about that disparity.
50 miles an hour.
If there was a pitcher, and
like 20
everyone, he like I guess compared like it's maybe 12 miles an hour faster, but like he's 12 miles an hour faster than the next guy.
Like forget it, no shot.
Crazy.
That's insane.
Like the
hockey is still because tennis is even a little more non-traditional of the big four, if you call it that. Hockey is the one.
Yeah, football's the worst. Football, you go and you're like,
football live is terrible. Terrible. I would say
unless you're on the team, every seat stinks.
Even if you're on the team, unless you're actively playing.
That's so true.
I remember when I used to not play in high school. I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I went to a
have
school
no
where you
idea
had to
who's
play.
blocking well.
Right. That's why whenever some of these diehard football fans are like, oh, they dropped back into a cover 2 with the spy, blah, 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 they know all this shit. I'm like, time to learn all
cover
that.
2 was my undoing in college football. You had to, as a tight end at Boston College, you had to recognize whether they were in cover 2 or not, and if you couldn't, you were gonna get the ball in the back of the head when you were supposed to turn. It was just I could not read defenses.
That's a pretty important part of it. Yeah,
it's enormous. They were like, "You see this rolled up corner?" I'm like, "Nah."
But it is interesting. Where like it's one of those things where like sometimes you just get it. Like I have a story I remember all the time where like Gronk was here after he retired from the Pats before he got on the Bucks. And we were talking about, I think Manziel was big in the news at the time, and it was how he never used his iPad and this and that. And Gronk was talking about, he's like, he had his buddy who I always forget his name. It's not like Beast, but it's something of the like, it's whatever you think Gronk's best friend slash bodyguard's name is, that's what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he was like, ask him how like what the usage on my iPad was. And I was like, what is it? He's like 0%. And I was like, how did you know? He's like, I don't. And like even Gronk was confused. He was like, I don't know. Right. I just look at it and I get it. Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, if you're bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody you're playing against, then you don't need an iPad. But I was in the middle of the pack. I needed to have a high football IQ, which I never.
I was gonna say you're a white guy. You need to have the high football IQ. You're a grinder. You need to. Yeah.
Do you still follow BC at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had a near upset over Florida State the other day, but the week before they nearly lost to Holy Cross, which is a high school JV team.
Yeah. I went to
I don't
FSU,
understand it.
and my dad went to BC, so we kind of always.
Oh,
like,
right,
talked about
that's
that
right.
game.
Yeah.
And I was like, I knew red bandana game was going to be an issue.
Yes.
Red bandana game always is.
Oh my gosh.
But it is. I like when I was a kid, we used to go to a lot of BC games and stuff like that because his buddy played for BC. His buddy was on Flutie's team, and so like we go up and we tailgate a lot. And like back then, this is early 2000s, probably late 90s. Like games were games. Like BC games were, you know, we'll never compare to the SEC, but like it was a football game.
Oh yeah, totally.
And it's kind of sad. That was the red bandana game, so there was a bigger crowd.
Right.
But they're a lot smaller than they used to be.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, the ACC is so competitive, and pretty soon there'll just be two conferences. And,
it's what's gonna happen. What happened? What they tried to do with the Premier League and stuff like that in soccer.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen in football. It's
yeah,
and it probably will be owned by Saudis too. Like, they are doing a lot of sport washing.
We're just on a collision course to Saudis owning everything. Fuck it, let's just get to the finish line here.
Can you imagine like the Bama boosters being like, wait?
We got sheiks who are
like we mean he's running the program.
Totally. Yeah.
There were a few other interesting things I thought as far as I got in the book. Favorite letters. I love F. I think the F is the best letter there is.
Yeah.
I think, and Feitelberg being my last name, I get to write it every time. Every time I ever write, I'm writing an F.
Do you like the way it looks?
The capital, capital F in cursive is majestic.
Yeah.
It's just a gorgeous
got a
letter.
great signature.
There's a lot of calligraphy going on, and I mean, I resented how much time they spent on cursive writing when I was in second grade. They could have taught us a second language, and instead they taught us how to sign checks, basically. But yeah,
my daughter asked me the other day, "What is cursive?" And I was like, "I don't have an answer for you."
The biggest waste of time. In second grade
it's a silly way to write that. You're going to have to figure out to pass the test and then never do again.
Yeah. Oh, it's insulting.
I love you
F
about second
F
grade.
is a good one.
G, I mean, G is great.
G is a nice one.
But it's also not
one.
like, I don't do it in the standard cursive where it like almost looks like a heart.
Right.
I'm like
yeah.
I like to.
The L is good too. A capital L has that whoosh whoosh whoosh.
Oh yeah, an L is a lot of fun. It's very soothing.
What's
there's
the worst
there's
letter?
a lot of zen. I mean, the Z is a nightmare.
The cursive Z is
the
weird.
cursive Z is a
The discrepancy
nightmare.
between the cursive Z and the regular Z is
and then
huge.
a lot of the lowercase m n stuff is very. I'm making mistakes all the time. I'm crossing out. And it's just, it's not worth. I mostly I print and I'll sign my name, but yeah, it was.
I can't even write like period anymore. I write so little.
Oh really? Yeah.
That like the other day I had to write. It was a parent teacher night, so I had to. My daughter left me a note, and then I had to leave her a note. And I had to write like 3 or 4 lines, and I was like, my hand was cramping up, and I was misspelling things, and like the handwriting's bad.
Oh, man.
7-year-old.
Exactly. I was like,
I would have loved to have gotten a note. My dad used to go to the parent-teacher conference, and he'd come over to. My parents were divorced, so he'd come over to the house afterwards, and he'd give me some baseball cards or something. He was really good at being a proud dad. He really But the bar was so low, and it irritates my brother. My brother's like, he made us think that we were really special, and I said, yeah, that's what a parent is supposed to do, and I hope you're doing that with your kids.
Right.
You're gonna have plenty of time to get the real world and the rest
Everyone
of the
else
world's
could be an asshole
interpretation of them. A dad has to be this person you can rely on to boost your ego. It's like going on Jimmy Fallon.
What do you think about when you think about kill yourself jokes? What's your opinion on that?
Oof. Well, there used to be a thing where kill yourself or die in a fire was something that was just a mic drop, right? There was nothing you could say, and now it's so common. It's like, ugh. I remember my mother saying to somebody in an argument, "Drop dead." And I thought, oh my gosh, it's the worst expression I've ever heard in my life. It's so final. And now we've become inured to it. Like the finger, I'm not exaggerating when I say if you gave my dad the finger on the highway, your day was going to go a lot different than you anticipated. And I remember my college football coach, Jack Bicknell, who coached Doug Flutie famously, he was late to a practice session in the summer because he said somebody gave me the finger on the highway and I pulled him over on the side and had him over his trunk. and then he always says, and then I came to a very safe decision, he said, and didn't hit the guy. I'm like, wow, he went really far in that. Just about to, oh my gosh. But back then you could be a celebrity and get away with something like that. Now it would lead at least the local news. Yeah, so it bothers me that people are so quick to say the worst possible thing, but it's being said so much that I almost think that you should take it seriously if they're threatening to kill you, I guess. Yeah. But I also think like, oh, these are empty, really cruel and really dumb things to say. I would never say it. I've thought it.
Right. Well, that's
why
I
hope something horrible happens to this person who ruined my day. But I don't want that on my record.
What do you think when hypothetically if someone was like, my quarterback just tore his Achilles, I'm going to kill myself?
Oh, my gosh.
Directed at somebody.
That's the problem with the English language is there's not a lot of in-between in terms of suicide and depression and everything like that. But I always think that I understand using it amongst your friends and you say, oh my, because I said it in the book in high school. I remember listening to the theme to Cheers and saying, this is the funniest show I've ever seen, and the theme song makes me want to jump off a bridge. It's like, making your way in the world today. You want to go to this bar where everybody's a drunk.
And no one can pour a beer.
Yeah, but at least they know my name. Yeah. That's how low the bar is for companionship. That they know my name, and they're glad I came. I have no family. I've drunk away everybody who was ever close to, but I could come here. And they know my name, and it was the saddest thing. And the funniest show on TV at the time. There was nothing like it.
Yeah, it was like #1 for like years and years.
I remember I've watched that fairly recicently, where I haven't gone through since like something like 12 seasons or something. Yeah. But I'm surprised how well it is.
It holds up, especially the pilot. Like I've read a lot of books about writing screenplays and pilots and things, and they all point to the Cheers pilot as being like this blueprint or Rosetta Stone for writing a modern pilot. Like the opening scene is this clearly 13-year-old kid comes into the bar and says to Sam, what did he say? Can I get a beer, pal? And Sam says, can I get an ID? And he gives the kid the ID. He says, oh, you're 38 years old. So you were in Vietnam? It's a military ID. So you were in Vietnam? He says, yeah. He says, what was Vietnam like? He says, gross. And Sam says, well, that's what they always say. War is gross. And that's the opening of this series. You're like, oh, of course it was going to be a hit. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And he says, sorry, soldier, I can't serve you. And then the kid, and he's a kid, he says, and this is the thanks we get. I mean, just brilliant. I'm telling it to you, and it's getting laughs.
What shows do you like?
Now, I love this show called Poker Face.
Oh yeah,
it's
Natalie Leon,
it's on Peacock.
Leon,
yeah, and I love that show. And
I think is a great comeback to
what's that about?
Natasha Leon.
Natasha Leon, yeah.
I feel like with streaming, everything became everyone like to say like, it's an 8-hour movie, and which is great, and I love those too. Yeah, but it kind of lost the procedural. Where I think Poker Face is like great. Like,
every episode is this great, and it's created by the guy who did the Glass Onion.
Yep.
And
Ryan Johnson.
Yeah. What's the first one that was so big?
Knives Out.
Yeah, he did that. So it's got that mentality and that sensibility. And the other show my wife and I really like is this show called Top Boy, which is on Netflix, and it's kind of, they say it's like a British Wire, but it's so much darker and bleaker than The Wire, but it's so well acted, and I really like that show. And
anything I found like BBC and anything overseas usually hits pretty well.
Yes.
BBC.
Like Better
I haven't seen.
Like just came out on Hulu from not BBC, the other one, Sky. Network, Sky TV, whatever. It's the other like British one. It's just like another kind of Luther-esque like crime procedural, and it's just like, yep, I'm in.
Yeah.
Not procedural, but crime.
And then the sitcom, I was on Life and Beth on Hulu, and we shot a season this year, and I got to work with Michael Rappaport and Tim Daly. And the late Jimmy Buffett was on an episode, and Maria Bamford was on an episode. Amy Sedaris was on a couple of episodes. We got to film in New Orleans, which is so fun to have a small part on a show that is on location, because we had so much time to do stuff when I wasn't having to act. Amy
Sedaris must be awesome.
Amy Sedaris was hilarious, and then the woman who played the woman who played Stifler's mom. What is it? Jennifer Coolidge. She was on. She was incredible. I mean, so funny, and it was. We had a great time.
Was Buffett? I feel like Buffett's kind of like a king in New Orleans.
Yeah, but I wasn't on set that day.
No.
I didn't work with Jimmy Buffett, but I did get to hang out with Rappaport, who's hilarious. We had so much fun. I didn't realize that.
He's sued Kevin.
Oh no. So fuck you, Gary. Wow. Fuck you.
Kevin's been in a
I've been in a deposition over Michael Rappaport.
Man.
Let me tell you, he and his lawyers did not present a good case.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna sit this one out. Jeez.
We were friends, and then
do I step in it?
He worked here. He worked here briefly.
He had a brief and shitty tenure here. It just did not end well, and then he became very combative. Very competitive. I think we're still getting sued, actually.
Really?
Yeah. It was like a dead case, and then he revived it or something like that. It's like,
what was I just gonna say?
It's this industry stuff.
I guess that's why they don't call it show Friends.
I forget if you told us this off air or on air, so we can cut it maybe. But are you still? Was there still a show in production with McKay?
Oh no, we're doing it as a film with J.J. Abrams.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, that's before the writer's strike. We were working on it as a feature, and J.J. Abrams is really nice and cool and I mean, the most important thing I think at that level is some humility. Mm-hmm. Whereas some people who are legendary like that, I imagine it's very uncomfortable to talk to them because you're just intimidated. But he came to a show and he came backstage and was friendly and complimentary. It was really awesome.
And it's going to be based on your life. Right?
Based on my my ill-fated college football career.
Yes.
Yes.
That's crazy. I don't know J.J. Abrams from anything other than nothing, but like I know him more as like large. And
Star Trek.
But
that's awesome.
But he also has a pretty diverse portfolio in terms of writing and also the films that he's produced and things like that. So it's myself, Ira Glass, and here the producers on the
Ira Glass, a pull quote on the book. You have
I have some strong blurbs on the back. On the back of the book. Which is the hardest part of writing a book is asking people to read it and then make a nice comment about it. It's like can I just write it? But then you have to promote it, and it's like these are fun. But sometimes I go and the people have not even looked at the cover of the book.
Sometimes they don't read 160 pages.
Right. And they'll say things. Now you separated it into chapters. What was behind that choice? So the Dickens was a big inspiration on me. He would separate into chapters, so I thought I would bite some of his.
I was talking to my mom about the book because her and my dad had called me and they had just bought me Judd Apatow's book. And
which one? The Sick in the Head?
Sick in the Head.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, actually, I've already read it. He came on the show to promote it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I watched the Great Depression with my parents before I ever really told them stuff that was kind of going on with me. So I would give them nudges like, hey, pay attention here.
That's his version of the crying trees. Watching the Great Depression with my parents going, that's interesting. Mom, Dad, what do you think of that?
That sounds like it sucks, doesn't it? But I was telling them about how you were coming in to promote Misfit, available now on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. And then I flipped it over and I was like, oh shit, like Judd Apatow has a blurb on this one. It was Schumer, Apatow, Ira Glass.
Yeah, and Adrienne Nicole LeBlanc, and who if you need a book to read, it's called Random Family. She immersed herself in the life of this family that lived in the Bronx, and there was some of the people were criminals, some of them were just nice people dealing with poverty, but it was such a beautiful book called Random Family. So she wrote a really good blurb, and then Seth Meyers wrote a really nice blurb. So I was so grateful to
it makes sense
everyone.
though, man. You're just one of the nicest dudes in the world.
Oh, thank you.
I can't imagine there's
Thank you.
I truly can't imagine there's anybody that you came across in the industry, at least. Maybe in your personal life, maybe you're an asshole. I don't know. But I can't imagine anybody being like, "Fuck that guy, Gary Gulman." I can't think of there would be one person or one reason.
I remember Paul Newman had this great quote where he said, "A man with no enemies is a man with no character." So I probably have some enemies, and my mother wasn't crazy about this book, but
I bet she's a little bit
she's still living in a denial over what actually happened, but she's it's like a bittersweetness for a Jewish mom to have her son write a book, but also be like, maybe you shouldn't read it because it makes me sound completely clueless about his depression. But I always say nobody knew, nobody would have understood.
It's hard now.
Yes, it's hard to tell
like,
if your kids, because part of the thing about being depressed is you hide it so well so that you can kind of manage. So I don't hold any ill will. I'm just reporting the story.
It's just funny, right?
It's fun. Exactly. It makes us laugh.
Your next book could be called "Everybody Loves Me But My Mom."
My wife said to her, she said, my mom's name is Barbara. She said, "This book is about Gary. It's not about revenge or anything." She said, you'll notice, Barbara, it's not called Surviving Barbara Gulman.
True.
And that got through to my mom. So my wife is excellent at
she sounds like she
she's really
you stumbled upon gold there
she's the most valuable player in my life. I'm really lucky.
I remember my mom, we went to a Chris Herron?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he's like
he was okay, the younger brother of a guy I started Boston College with. His older brother, Mike Herron, who was a basketball star at the same high school, Durfee High School. So Mike was in my class, and then the year after I graduated, Chris was a freshman at Boston College, and he still had a long ways to go in his fight, but he is incredibly inspiring. I really admire him.
Yeah, he's
wrote a great book too.
He's from Fall River, he's like a family type friend. And I remember bumping into him at the movies, him and his wife. And it was just after
Heather.
It was just after everything had come out. Not everything had come out, but like the 30 for 30 had come out and all that stuff. And my mom was like, she said that, she's like, "This is the real MVP right here." And I was like, "Mom, you can't fucking say that to him right now."
And that's so funny, but it's true. I'm sure he'd agree to that. The only thing I don't like, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but somebody will say, "You really married up to me," and I'm like, I'm a handsome, talented man. There's
movies with J.J. Abrams.
There is a quality in this relationship. It's just
I can say it. You can't.
Yes, exactly. I'm so insecure about being like, it was a chiropractor who said it. He said, "We married up," and I said, "You may have married up. This is my weight class."
The very fact, I forget, someone has a joke where it's like, the very fact that we're together means we're in the same league. They don't put men's league team out against the Celtics.
Totally. But it's all my insecurity that I feel insulted by this thing that the person said in passing.
I'll say it and have someone repeat it, and then I'll be like, "What the fuck you think you're saying that?" Like, I opened the door, but still.
That's classic. Yeah, I can make fun of my mom. You can't. I can say it. You can't. It makes all the sense in the world. So. Well, man, it's always good to see you doing well.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me on,
thank
guys.
You so
I always
much,
look forward to
this. It feels like you're really crushing it, so we'll look forward to anything you do.
What if I said this? Say that again. It looks like you're really crushing it.
Looks like you're really crushing it.
Guys, I'm crushing it.
All right, Seinfeld. Thank you so much, Gary.
All right, big thanks for watching. If you made it through this whole episode, that means you should be subscribed. There's so many of you out there who watch and don't subscribe, so make sure you are a KFC Radio subscriber. Make sure you get all the content when it drops. Click that button now.
I have 9 fingers. I'm still subscribed. It's that easy.